So, welcome everyone to this edition of Mind Your Own Business. We're very, very privileged today to have Joe Scheid here to talk about something that all of us have likely not been on top of. As you know, this podcast is really built to help you look around the corner, look over the horizon, and try to see what you might need to address that just isn't top of mind. So, Joe, welcome. It's great to have you here.
Appreciate it.
So let me ask you, I know that the pandemic and supply chain and what's going to happen with interest rates has affected a lot of business owners I work with, and they're sort of losing sight of what I would call the big picture. Have you seen that? And then if you have, talk a little bit about what you're seeing.
Well, I've run it. Supply chain has been the biggest problem. And the other thing that I've seen is workforce, in a sense, workforce supply chain. Finding people, the right people to put in the right seats within the organization to keep the organization moving forward. And we had a lot of people that were on federal and state benefits for unemployment that frankly chose not to work. It was better for them financially not to work. And so finding quality people to fill the needs of the organization has been a big part of it, in addition to supply chain. And what's ended up happening because of all of this is that receivables, if you look at AR aging reports for companies, receivables are coming in much slower over the last 2 years or so than is normal. And it's causing us to have a little bit of a working capital problem.
So I know you're an expert in helping companies sort of plot their future. And talk a little bit about, are we doing the level of planning that we're supposed to be right now or should be? What's happening in that arena?
Well, specifically, if you look at the demographic of the baby boomers and privately held companies, we usually think of these as either small or middle market size companies, generally, kind of the backbone of the US economy. Privately held corporations account for 92% of our economic growth every year, and money moving through the economy in the United States. And the issue is that we've got about 20 million of these business owners that are going to be transitioning their businesses over the next 10 to 15 years, whether they like it or not, because none of us are promised how much time we get to spend on this planet. And so what we're finding is that only about 15% of these owners have done any type of succession, exit, or business continuity planning. And that is rather alarming, because if you look at the psychographics of upcoming buyers, in other words, the mindset and the makeup, what we think of as an ownership mindset, if you look at the generation coming up behind, not necessarily the X and Y gen, but especially in the millennial generation, and you quantify that, what we found is that there's only buyers for about 2/3 of those businesses out there. So It's the ones that are prepared, the ones that have done the planning ahead of time, that are going to be able to exit, like we like to say, on their own terms.
So I own a business. I know in the next 10 years that I won't be active in it. When should I get started?
Well, at a minimum, 3 to 5 years before the exit would take place. Now, that doesn't mean if you plan to exit in less than 3 to 5 years that you should do nothing. It just means that the ideal situation would be a minimum time frame of 3 to 5 years, ideally 10 to 15, to begin to have the conversation about what are the options that are out there for me and for my business. Am I looking to transition internally to key employees? Am I looking to transition to family members? Or am I looking for private equity to come in and buy a portion of the company? Or lastly, am I looking just for a third-party buyer, what we would call a strategic buyer type of situation? And beginning to identify what those options are, and then what all the pros and cons and the tax implications of those types of transitions would be. What we find in most cases is that our founders, our owners, haven't done that preliminary work to understand what those options are, and therefore when they go to try to go to market with the business or try to make the transition happen, they're not ready, and they end up having to back up, do 1 to 2 years worth of work to get ready, and that takes their eye off the ball of driving the business forward.
Yeah. Now, I have heard that the majority, if not the vast majority, of business transitions were because of an unexpected event, a death, a major illness, some other issue. And so in those cases, being prepared for the unexpected is almost like we all should be doing this.
Absolutely. It's when you talk about succession planning and proper succession planning as an industry, it all has to start with de-risking the company. All of the what if types of scenarios. And so if you sit down and at least start that way by beginning to look at what would happen if I died, what would happen if I was unable to perform my duties on a daily basis? Do I have my management team to built up to the point where they can operate the business without me at the helm on a regular basis for an extended period of time? This type of de-risking will at least give me the peace of mind to know that if one of those awful types of things were to happen, that the business would be okay and the business would be able to go forward. Because what we found, Stephen, is that in the vast majority of the cases, 85-90% of the time, the spouse of the owner, although they may be a shareholder, have not been involved in the day-to-day operation of the business and would have no idea what to do if they were to lose their founder, owner, spouse. And so we had a case where that happened with one of the businesses we're working with, that we were brought in after the death occurred, and it could have been a very ugly situation. Now the management team has rallied, and they ended up having the best year in the company's history in 2021. So that has been a very, very happy ending. Right. And the transition plan for them is in place, and we'll begin to execute that plan this month for making the transition to the leadership team and basically buying the surviving spouse out of the business.
Yeah. Now, I've always heard that during an acquisition, there are certain multiples for certain types of business.
Yeah.
And, so even if it's unexpected, I should be okay because I'm going to get, 3x, 4x, whatever it is. But I get the sense that's probably not true. Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that point up. Bankers, CPAs, got to have them. Love those partners involved with us. And even they're more merger and acquisition firms, M&A firms. There are really, really good ones out there. And then there are those that are just transaction oriented. And it's like, get the transaction done at all costs. A lot of folks will tell our owners that they can expect an X multiple on EBITDA or net cash flow or free cash flow, whatever term they might be using. Mm-hmm. The reality is that there are value drivers within any organization. If I just pulled a couple of things out of the hat, what are the ongoing working capital needs of the organization? How much cash has to go with the company when it transitions? What's my customer concentration? How much of my business is coming from my top 5, 10, 20% of my customer base? And what would happen if I lost one of those customers? Just using those two things as examples. Each of those value drivers affect ultimately our multiple. And if we're scoring below average or at industry average in any of those, we're going to see a reduction in the value of our company. It is never as simple as a multiple of EBITDA. Ultimately, the math is done very similar to that, but
Right.
there are a tremendous amount of add backs and deductions that come from ultimately what will be a sale price. We call it adjusted EBITDA. So first, we don't just take our net cash flow number or our EBITDA number and apply a multiple to it. We've got to take that number and then make all the proper additions and deductions from that number to arrive at adjusted EBITDA. Then we have to look at the organization within a metric. Are they best in class? Are they below average? Are they at industry average? That's going to determine, along with where we're at with all the value drivers that we talked about, where we're going to kind of score and where we're going to line up, and then what we're going to be able to expect realistically in the form of a multiple on that adjusted EBITDA. And one last thing. There are different levels that our organization can be at from a top line revenue and a bottom line profit perspective. And there are sweet spots in every industry. And if we're able to hit those sweet spots, that's automatically going to push our multiple up. Whereas if we're operating below those sweet spots or even above those sweet spots where we're not as profitable, we're going to see that multiple drop.
Complicated. So I'm sitting here, I'm watching this show. I suddenly have that moment like, oh my, I really better do something.
Right.
You know, now you're great at what you do. You're very well known. And obviously contacting you would be one thing I could do. As I think through this, what are the things I should have in mind when I'm contacting you or making that next step? To get going?
Yeah, there's a couple of things that I think are important to mention at this point.
Yeah.
If you look at the studies, Stephen, 85% of business owners that make the transition out of their organization are unhappy afterwards. And most of the time we think that's because they didn't get the right price or it was a money thing. We weren't happy with the money. The reality of it is we didn't do the planning ahead of time to identify what we were going to do with our time, energy, passion once we left the operation. And we end up as an owner or a founder that's worked 30 to 40 years building this company up, that we don't know what to do with ourselves once we leave. So I would say the number one thing to keep in mind is I need to be able to define what I'm going to do next after I leave my business. And I need to have that conversation with somebody that can walk me through the process of being able to identify what are those things, other things away from the business that I'm passionate about. Okay. And it doesn't matter what it is. It could be playing golf. It could be starting another company. It could be getting involved in philanthropic work. Doesn't matter as long as we have a reason to get up out of bed every morning, right? After we've left the company. So that's number one. Number two would be understand that when you're walking through the planning process, it's very difficult to take our eye off of what's happening day to day inside of the business. That's what we call working in the business. We have to be prepared to work on the business, to take some time away, carve some time out for purposes of doing this planning and giving as much energy and passion to that we give to working in the business to working on the business. So we've got to mentally prepare ourselves for that difference, because the planning process is not going to last forever. We're going to be able to get back to what we love to do. But we've got to be ready to dedicate the time and the energy and the focus necessary to get the planning done. The last one would be what I like to refer to as due diligence. If we go to market with our business, we're going to walk through a process called due diligence. Due diligence is the attorneys, the bankers, everybody looking at everything within our organization. They're going to be looking at our financials. They might be interviewing our management team. It's every stone is going to be turned over and looked at. And we think we've got everything buttoned up within our organization, but when we get into due diligence, that's where the customer concentration, the delay in receivables, the types of stuff that we've talked about with working capital, that's where all of that kind of comes out into the light. And so good, proper planning is done very much like the due diligence process in a transaction is done. And so be prepared for that, and don't be afraid of it, because you're going to be so much better prepared for when the actual due diligence takes place. You will have already been through it. You're going to know what to expect. Don't be afraid to let an outside somebody that you trust from the outside come in and take a look at everything going on in the business. Because what ends up happening with the pretty much, I cannot think of a case where we have not had, that's a double negative, where we have not had an increase in gross revenue and an increase in net profit because of walking through this process. Every single company that we've worked with has seen increases in both of those because we're able to fine tune what's happening within the organization. And as we're preparing it for that transition, we're able to take advantage of the benefits that provides to us today while we're still in the business.
Smart. So if I were wanting to find you, I'm watching this and I said, I need to talk to Joe. What do I search for? How do I find you?
Our company is called Legacy Advisors Arizona. So our website is legacyadvisorsaz.com. And if anybody wants to, I'm Joe at legacyadvisorsaz.com. And our phone number is 480, I've got to look it up here, 480-292-8116.
Yeah.
Anybody can reach out to me. I'm a member of Vistage. They can reach out to me within Vistage. I'm happy to talk to anybody about anything. We don't charge by the hour, so we can have a conversation about anything. Yeah, if you just do a Google search on Joe Scheid, you will find me.
Now, if I live, and I grew up in Dallas, so I can say this. If I grew up in Dallas, I may not really like Arizona right now because the Cardinals beat the Cowboys, but and I may have to play them again, which would be frightening. But I don't live in Arizona. I'm not blessed in that way. Can I still talk to you? Is it still relevant?
Yeah. We've got clients all over the country, as far away as North Carolina, and this technology that we're talking on today has made it so that we're able to do our work from really anywhere in the world. And our process is built on using encrypted online files in the cloud. So we're able to share information, we're able to have meetings, but we've got clients in 5-6 different states that are ongoing engagements right now. And so that's not an issue at all.
Perfect.
But I will tell you, if we also have a network of people that we trust throughout the country, and if you're looking for somebody that's closer to you geographically, we're happy to make a direct referral to one of our partners that we know is going to do the same quality work that we do here.
Perfect. Well, I know you are busy. This first major week back of the new year is always pretty intense. So thank you. And this will be going out this week. So
Great.
Everybody, Joe is busy this week, but he is ready to go starting this coming Monday, because this will probably go out on Friday.
Look, we at the end of the day, we want to help people to get prepared to make the transition. Our mindset is, if we do the right work with the right mindset, everything else is going to take care of itself. So if you think that we could be somebody that could help you, even just by having a no obligation conversation, I hate that word, but just having a conversation, don't hesitate to reach out.
Perfect. Well, I appreciate your time, and we'll talk again.
I look forward to it, Stephen. Thank you very much.